When it comes to the professional world, fan art is such a broad term, and you're going to get varying levels of different skills from the artists who did fan art, from a novice to an expert. Now, we also know that there are people in my field who did fan projects for themselves and really hit it out of the ballpark. So the thing that I want to explore is, are fan projects great creative projects? Hey guys, it's Toniko Pantoja, and today I'd like to talk about fan art and fan projects. Now, to some artists, this is a controversial topic, but it's actually super common within the art community. So what is a fan project, or in other lingo, fan art? It's a tribute project or art to an existing IP or an existing intellectual property. That IP could be an existing anime or a movie or a video game. Someone else made those stories, those characters in that world. It either belongs to someone else or a company. Many artists who are a fan of these intellectual properties or these ideas that belong to someone else make tribute pieces for those IP, and that includes fan art. Now, like I said, the practice of doing fan art is super common within the art community, but there are professionals that are against or have opinions against fan art, and there's a lot of good reasons why some people would be against it and why some people are pro for it. Now, the thing that I want to talk about more is fan projects as a creative project. Are they good for creative growth? Or is it cheap, unoriginal art that somehow gets you more followers? And these are the things I want to talk about. I don't think I'll talk about things about the legal rights and the legal processes. I'll probably mention it, but I kind of want to tackle this more in a creative point of view. I'm pretty sure most of us can agree that doing fan art for an existing property with a huge fan base allows your work to be more exposed to people within that community, and therefore your work gets more exposure. So imagine if you did fan art for a game like Genshin Impact, which has a huge fan base, and then you did fan art of Core Indie House that also has a pretty okay fan base, I guess. What if you somehow had them in a crossover? That could get the internet talking, I guess. And therefore you'll probably get more exposure and likes to your work, I don't know. So I remember doing a fan art which is a crossover between Death Stranding and that animated movie Klaus, because the main characters were both male men and they both came out at the same year, one being a video game, one being a movie, and they were about mailmen. And I thought it was funny that these significant things featured a mailman as a character, so I thought it would be funny to make art for that. And I got a lot of likes for that, I got a lot of traction for that piece of art. Regardless of the skill or how good it looks or how bad it looks, it still got exposure. And the thing about exposure, it can lead to followers. If people like your work, those followers can eventually become supporters. Supporters can somehow eventually become a monetary benefit. I think the other great thing about fan art is that you're working with something that already has a lot of the legwork figured out in terms of the story, the characters. Now, it's really just adding on top of that when you're doing a fan art of something that you're a fan of. So in other words, you're not starting something completely from scratch, like the idea and all. You're working off of something. You're adapting something that already exists. No need to make any big creative decision making unless you want to, but I think if you're really passionate or you really love this project or it speaks to you, you're probably going to make a better piece of fan art or a creative project out of it. And I'm pretty sure that's why a lot of artists resort to fan art, because they can already work off of something that already exists and something that they already like. Now, I don't know about you guys, but what I like about doing fan art myself is that it allows me to stay productive. Like, I don't need to brainstorm a completely new idea. Like, if I just wanted to get better at drawing or just draw something, I could already start with something that already exists. So if I just wanted to stay productive on just drawing and stuff like that, fan art. So let's talk about the negs, or the disadvantages of pursuing fan art. I think the top one is that you don't really own it. You own the art, there's an argument for that, but you don't really own the rights to the characters and the world and the stories. So it's more of an ownership and legal rights to it if you plan to make money out of it. Now hold on, many artists sell prints, many artists make money based on the fan art that they do. And I think that's fine, but when it comes to creative projects, you have to be careful where it doesn't create a conflict of interest with the company that owns the rights to those characters and stories and worlds to make you take it down. It's a case-by-case thing. Some companies treat it differently, some companies will offer licensing rights to it, but I think the big one is ownership and rights. I think one disadvantage I can think of by solely pursuing fan art alone is that you can get typecasted just doing fan art, or typecasted in doing fan art for a specific property. Like, you'll only be seen as the person that does fan art, or people will only follow your work for the fan art. Another disadvantage I can think of is dealing with the toxic community regarding the fan art. Like, almost 10 years ago, wasn't there this case where this girl tried to do fan art of the Steven Universe characters and they drew it in a way that a lot of the fans did not appreciate, so they started bullying her to the point where she tried to off herself? And again, look, it's not just Steven Universe, it's like a lot of other properties that can have a really toxic community. Now, I don't think that I've encountered this myself, but I remember seeing people criticizing a fan art that I did of an existing video game, saying my style or my take is not appropriate or it doesn't fit with the game. I remember getting criticized and DM'd by getting certain details wrong. It's sad to say this, but some professionals view fan art as a stigma. A lot of these professionals view fan art as unoriginal, doesn't really show off one's creativity or their own ideas. And if you're a newer artist that's lesser skilled, it comes off as amateurish. Like, imagine getting a portfolio from someone who doesn't really have the chops to get to work, and their portfolio is just filled with fan art and copies of existing property. It definitely gives an amateurish impression. So here's my overall opinion about fan art. Think of fan art as investments. They don't have to be monetary. They could be things like building your skill level, experimenting with a creative voice on top of a foundation that already exists. Because I think creativity works best when it's based off something that already exists, or there's limitations and constrictions set to you. Something transformative like adaptations or alternative takes. There's a reason why spoofs and parodies are quite popular too. It's making something that's heavily inspired and turning into something that's amusing. Like I said, it helps you build a community because you also attract people who are a fan of those intellectual properties that you made projects based out of. And if your creative voice and skill is pretty good, it's going to get noticed beyond the context of the art. Like, there are people who did ambitious fan projects, and at the end of the day, the work gets noticed and it leads to great opportunities for them. Now, the reason why you see a lot of fan art on my Instagram or my social media pages is because sometimes it's just nice to draw something without having to come up with something new, but it's just there to experiment with my own style, to try something new, to draw things that I'm not familiar with, but I'm still a fan of. So a lot of the personal benefit that I get doing fan art is not really monetary. I don't even make money doing fan art. I do it because it gives me something to work off of when I want to draw something, or animate something, or storyboard something, depending on how I feel. Now, going back to the whole issue of ownership and who owns what and legal rights and stuff like that, I mean, the bad thing that a company can do is to make you cease and desist it, or to make you take down that fan project. But the thing about fan projects or fan art is that to companies, it's free or very cheap marketing for them. Again, it's a case-by-case thing. I can see a company do it if it's a conflicts of interest thing. So let's say my fan project is a remake of a game that they did, and let's say this company was doing their own remake of the same game. It somehow disrupts their business or becomes significant enough where the company takes notice. Again, it's a case-by-case thing. But look, if we're merely just talking about fan art or drawings, or even small animation, it's pretty much a nothing burger. Speaking of fan art, drawings, or even fan animation, from what I hear in the anime industry, it's often looked highly upon to do fan animation or to use copyright and existing characters to show your overall skills and draftsmanship chops, especially when it comes to dealing with characters within existing anime work. Now, when it comes to putting fan art in your official portfolio, I don't really have an opinion about that. And I think some visual development artists take an existing property or story and their whole portfolio is showing how they would approach a project utilizing their skills and their creative decision making. I'm all in for that. Now, I may be going off topic here, but I do remember that when I was a student sending my portfolio to different studios, especially to like Disney Feature, they did not want any copyright characters in your portfolio. I was told it was to emphasize an artist's own originality. I can't really confirm that, but what I can believe is that it might be a whole legal issue, like having characters in work that doesn't really belong to Disney, for example. Now, the reason why I think this, and I might be reaching here, is that when random people submit pitches of ideas that they have and they want to make it a show or a film, and they send it to the studio, the employees receiving that random pitch bible are encouraged to delete it, especially when it was unsolicited. Why? Because let's say a studio releases a project that's very similar to that pitch Bible. The person who wrote that pitch Bible starts to build a legal case against that studio. And if there's proof that the studio did open that pitch Bible, they opened that file, that just adds more to the case. This is what I heard, and I'm definitely going off topic with the whole talk of fan art. But it was just me trying to think about why some studios do not want to have copyright characters in the student's portfolio. But I could be wrong, I could be corrected. Maybe it really is just as simple as the studio wanting to see original work from a student despite whether they're going for animation, storyboarding, or viz dev. My opinion is that to me it doesn't really matter, so I can't speak for anyone else that says no to having fan art or other copyright characters in your portfolio. So you'll often hear things like, oh, fan art is going to get you more followers and more eyes to your work, but you're also going to hear things like, oh, you don't own those characters so you can't make money or you can't make a future living out of it, so why even bother? Look, at the end of the day, fan art and fan projects, they're made because we're showing our appreciation for something, and we're using fan art as a vehicle just to make stuff. And that could just mean making stuff that we find fun or passionate about. Anyways, that's all. Bye.
Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.